Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. President Draupadi Murmu has renamed the two iconic halls at Rashtrapati Bhavan. If you remember, Durbar Hall, that's now going to be called Gantantra Mandap, and Ashoka Hall has been renamed as Ashoka Mandap. Now, this decision was taken to make the ambience uh, of the building reflect the cultural values and ethos of India. Now, according to the statement which has been issued by Rashtrapati Bhavan, it says that Darbar refers to courts of Indian rulers and British Raj. It lost its relevance when India became republic. Now, this, of course, is the latest move by the BJP government in its push to rid the country of the colonial baggage. So today, what we are going to discuss is that why did Rashtrapati Bhavan take this decision? Though, of course, it's not the first one. If you remember, Mughal Gardens at Rashtrapati Bhavan was also renamed as Amrit Udayan, and several other names have been changed in the past years, in the past 10 years, if you have seen. So, what is the idea behind changing the names or renaming these two iconic halls? And is it something which meets more than the eye? We're going to discuss this. Joining me is Professor Ajay Gudavarti, who's from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Thank you so much for joining. We have Pushpraj Deshpande, who's the author of the Bharat Jodo Yatra. Thank you, Pushpraj, for joining. And I'll begin the discussion with Ajay Gudavarti. Ajay, what do you think is the main motive? The press release which has been issued by the Rashtrapati Bhavan, it says that the Darbar refers to the courts of the Indian rulers and British Raj, and this has lost relevance since India became republic. Now, is this a convincing uh, argument which has been put forth by Rashtrapati Bhavan?
Well, there are two things to it, Nilu. One, this is nothing new, right? We have had a round of where cities like Bangalore were renamed as Bengaluru and Calcutta became Kolkata. So this is nothing new that we went through this phase of decolonization, where cities have been renamed to have bring in some kind of a local cultural idiom into play. But this renaming process clearly seems to hint at a certain kind of a religious symbolism, including even the architecture of the central vista that has been rebuilt. Clearly has this kind of a quote unquote Hindu symbolism. So which is I wouldn't there are two things to it. One, that what does, in even if you want to kind of claim your own ancient Hindu symbolism, some kind of a local culture, which is good, there shouldn't be any problem with it. But the point is that even within that culture, is there a single culture that we can really point out? Why this terminology of mandapam, which is a kind of a religious symbolism, and down south, mandapam is usually used for marriage ceremonies. So I really do not know why Rashtrapati Bhavan, what kind of a marriage ceremony is going to happen in Rashtrapati Bhavan that one should rename this way. Second, that if you really want to have local cultural symbolism, why not bhakti tradition? Why not name something on Kabir? We can also have that. Also is a kind of a decolonization. They no, why do you have to? So this kind of, in the name of decolonization, the point we have to really make out is, it what is that they wish to project? Is, I mean, in the name of cultural symbolism, in the name of decolonialism, what is that they're reclaiming? If you remember some time back, Minister of External Affairs, when we democracy downgraded us on democracy index, the Ministry of External Affairs came out with a document on democracy, and it claimed that India is the mother of democracy, and that Vaishali, and we have had one of the most ancient democracies. We have had elections and councils in Vaishali even during the ancient period. So these kinds of grandstanding claims are, on one hand, you make those kinds of claims, and in the process, a general message is that one cannot critically analyze our own cultural ethos. Of course, culture brings a strong sense of belonging for common people, which is a welcome thing. But within that culture, there are so many aspects that one would not. That is why you have Ganatantra. By combining Ganatantra with Mandapam, what we are doing is that Ganatantra stands for a certain modern ethic of state rights. It's a republic, right? Republic would mean certain constitutional vision, certain idea of rights, certain idea of citizenry. So what would happen to the, we have declared ourselves republic, precisely constitutional republic, precisely because every country has ancient cultural ethos where everything is not acceptable. India has had a practice of untouchability. India has had the most heinous kind of caste practices, gendered practices. We are not sure of how sexual minorities were treated. So we have had a legacy. So point is that can we be critical of that, call it Indian, Indic, Hindu, whatever you wish to call it, that culture? That is the main question that we need to discuss today in modern, liberal, democratic, constitutional setups. That it is good to have a cultural memory. It is good to claim your own culture. It is good to have a local cultural idiom. I'm all for it. But what happens to those aspects which one needs to be critical of? I think on that, the current regime is at best silent and at worst trying to reinforce some of those cultural prejudices by justifying them in the name of decolonization.
Right. Uh, I'm surprised because there's not been too much of a reaction from the opposition parties, except for one soundbite which I saw of Priyanka Gandhi, where she said a reporter was asking her that these two iconic halls have been renamed. So she says Darbar ka concept hai, Shahenshah ka nahi, which means that there is a concept of uh, a darbar, but apparently they believe in Shahenshah, or they believe in the concept of Shahenshah. So, my question to you, Pushpraj, is that can one really criticize this move by the Rashtrapati Bhavan? That look, now India is a republic, so we've changed the name. But as what Ajay Gudawardi was saying, that they are trying to bring in a religious symbolism into it, and very discreetly they are trying to push in their own agenda. So, how does one criticize? Because if you criticize, if you analyze, then you get to be labeled as something A, B, C, or D.
Hi, Niluji. Thank you for having me on the Federal. As Professor Gudavardi has already said, it's quite evident that the BJP government is prioritizing the symbolic over the substantive. But, and I mean, we know for a fact that over the last few years, they have renamed multiple things in their bid to pander to the symbolic and the formative. But it's worth dissecting even this symbolic. Normatively, let us first ask ourselves this: does the BJP government suddenly become more republican? So that is what Gantantra means, republic. In renaming the Darbar Hall as Gantantra Mandap. This may seem pedantic, but the reason India's founders crafted India to be a democratic republic rather than just a democracy is that as a nation, we should respect even the minority in letter and spirit. So let me ask yourself this and your viewers this: has the BJP respected or embraced the minority? Has it really been a Republican in the true sense of this of the word? The Prime Minister and the Home Minister have publicly vilified Muslims as minorities and termites and infiltrators. At the same time, mob lynchings and the bulldozing of Muslim homes continue unabated. There was a frontline article I read a few weeks ago where it said that over 1.5 lakh Muslim homes have been razed and 7.38 lakh Muslims have been rendered homeless because of the BJP's bulldozer Raj. Now, we also know for a fact that the laws of this land are being methodically misused to stop Muslims and Christians from doing their business, from livelihoods, from praying, and from loving freely. Now, none of this is Republican, nor is the brute suppression of the minority of the opposition, which represents the minority voice today, by suspending them, by caricaturing them, or targeting them by using government agencies. All of this is antithetical to republicanism as a value. The point I'm trying to make here, it's a very convoluted point, but what I'm trying to say is, if the BJP government is genuinely wanting to be hailed as a champion of the Gantantra or the Republic, it must first uphold the basic values of republicanism, which is to respect the minority and to respect the minority opinion. That is the first point I'm trying to make. The second thing is, by altering the names of historical places, the BJP is clearly seeking to pander to populist sentiments. That's fine. That's their, but it's a political ploy, and they are perfectly entitled to that, playing that game. But in erasing that history, we do
No,
ourselves
but
know.
Pushpraj, when you say this, Pushpraj, but when you say that it's a political ploy, then the Rashtrapati Bhavan separates itself from the government. That's what I have read, that Rashtrapati Bhavan has made this decision, and it's not the decision by the government.
unless I'm very mistaken and I've misread the constitution, I believe that the president of India operates on the advice given by the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. So unless I'm very mistaken, I'm fairly certain this is prodded and come from the BJP government. Uh, nothing more to that particular point. See, I want to say this in erasing this history. I want to finish the earlier point I was saying. We are not making ourselves any. We are not doing ourselves any service. Let me explain why. As a student of history, there are two ways of looking at history. One is James Joyce's "History is a nightmare" from which I'm trying to away. The other is that history is a toolkit to avoid the mistakes of the past. That we look at the past objectively, no matter how difficult it is, and we make better choices for ourselves as a nation, as a people. Now, the imperial Darbar Hall, which is what it was a sign of colonialism. No one is denying that. But it also represented everything that colonialism represented. That included the unbridled loot of $44 trillion from India by a select few companies, which the British Raj facilitated. That's the first thing. It included the suppression of our freedoms to speak and protest. It also represents the view that India can be governed only by a viceroy and his imperial council and not by states or Zilla Panchayats or municipalities. Unless I'm very mistaken, isn't this what the BJP government is doing today? Exactly the same thing. Isn't it? It's centralizing powers in the PMO and financially starving states. Isn't the BJP government slapping UPA and sedition cases and Pegasus and investigative agencies against us for speaking truth to power? And isn't the BJP government, like the colonial government, also working for its select crony capitalists, selling our public assets like airports, mines, trains, and PSUs to their super friends? So my point is, if the BJP government genuinely wants to be this champion of republicanism, please practice what republicanism actually means, firstly. And secondly, learn from history. By erasing history and repeating it yourself, you're not doing the country any service. You are actually just a new age. You are just new age colonial Raj, nothing else. And that is why Priyanka Gandhi made that point about Shehenshah. You conduct yourself as if you are the new age Shehenshah of this land, and that all of us are supposed to be your subjects. That is why he started with the Sengol and all the drama, right? He thinks that he was crowned, not elected, that he was anointed. This is a wrong conception of India and the constitutional idea of what the parliamentary democracy.
Right. So, if you assume that this is a political ploy, Ajay Gudavarti, now this ploy, the political ploy, looks like a binary and a very clever binary where you talk about republicanism and you also talk about the religious symbolism, what you pointed out. So, how long will this binary go? And, what is the real end to this kind of political binary, if at all we see it in that light?
Yes, that's a good question. Where does this kind of symbolism take us? Definitely, it gives us a kind of a sense of belonging. That to that extent, the symbolism works. But beyond that, the symbolism doesn't work because after a point in time, people will start asking what is the sense that one is getting in terms of the sense of belonging. So if you remember, the last year they announced horrors of partition, that we want to celebrate horrors of partition. We want to remember, and they've also perhaps opened a museum in Teen Murti. On the same hand, on the other hand, they say that Gujarat riots need to be erased from the syllabus because this needs to be, because we should not teach dark things to our children, and there should be no memory of violence. And they want to revive Manusmriti in Rajasthan. So you can see, if you see all these things together, that wanting to bring back horrors of partition, wanting to erase Gujarat riots, wanting to erase Muslim contribution from history, wanting to bring back Manusmriti, and even in terms of caste, if you see, the BJP MP had written, Mr. Vijay had written 3 volumes saying that caste in India was brought in by Muslim invaders. That untouchability was brought in by Muslim invaders. So the next stage of this is falsification of history. You start falsifying history, claiming a supremacist claim of the greatness of our ancient civilization, that we are the Vishwa Gurus. Part of which, what it converts in a republic, is that it conveys a message that citizens cannot raise valid questions, because we are such a great civilization, and they are the custodians and representatives of this greatness of this great Indian civilization, that everybody else needs to be mute. because they become the rightful custodians and representatives. So if we are today to raise critical questions on caste practice or gender practice in ancient India, they will turn around and say that you are anti-India, you are urban Naxal, you are anti-Hindu and whatnot. Therefore, the point is that this kind, I think India is a fairly open democracy. People see through the fact that BJP lost in both Ayodhya and Badrinath. I think is a clear message to say that how astute Indian people are in terms of their political sensibilities. That I think mere symbolism, that's what perhaps Sangh Parivar has to learn. Symbolism is good. In all modern democracies, symbolism works. But symbolism is always backed by actions. Nilu, what Gandhiji said, the idea of happiness, Gandhiji says, is that when your thought, your action and your deeds have a certain continuity. RSS unfortunately historically has learned the wrong lessons and do exactly the opposite, that you say something, do something, and they think that this will hoodwink people into submission. But they have to learn this lesson that in modern democracies all over the world, not India, forget India, look at what's happening in Pakistan, a state that a country that the Sangh Parivar is very fond of and keep repeating, that today's citizenry is keeping a military under check, that there is no way that military is able to get past, because it has to it is coming under the pressures of modern liberal democratic pressures. So I mean, I think we have to awaken to this fact, and republic values precisely represent that tradition, that you can celebrate culture, there is nothing wrong, but within that culture you might have certain limitations. We have had Manusmriti, we cannot celebrate Manusmriti, it is simply anti-modern, anti-women, anti-Dalit. Simply it's as simple as that. You have to drop it. History moves on. There's nothing to feel nostalgic and this kind of a super massive claims in history. It takes us to this Huntington kind of harebrained thesis of clash of civilizations, that we have to only fight with each other and civilizations cannot learn from each other. We all learn in history from each other's culture. India has benefited immensely from Muslim culture, there is no doubt in that. There are other offset, there are flip side to the Muslim culture. One has to be critical in the modern times in terms of gender practices, but there are good practices. So republican values in terms of its social vision allows us this debate. It's a continuous debate. We do not, the fault lines are never clearly laid out. That is why you need an open democracy. No way to draw a line between culture and openness. For instance, all religious cultural practices sometimes are gendered, but sometimes we might feel we have to preserve some of them in terms of maintaining a certain cohesiveness. So we really do not know. That is why democracies need multiple voices. But here is a government which is silencing the citizenry. Now it has moved on to silencing the entire opposition. Last time they have suspended a single person representing entire thing. I mean, it's actually self defeatist. The popular mandate they have got, they are on a suicidal path. This kind of an infinite hunger for power is completely anti-republican. In that, just if you add mandapam, that mandapam is not going to do any magic, and there is no
Absolutely.
marriage happening between republicanism and ancient culture here.
Absolutely. But the big question, Pushpraj, is that, by fusing these two things, Republic and the Mandapam, Republicanism and the Mandapam, is BJP government going to be open to further and bigger criticism from here on? And will you see them on the back foot, or it's just like the previous occasions where they were on a name changing spree and nobody could do anything about it?
Uh, See, Niluji, the opposition has to pick and choose its battles, right? There are number of genuine issues that are facing the nation and the people. I'll just point out four of those big issues. One is, of course, the Agniveer scam. It's nothing less than a scam. The other thing is this financial starving of state governments, and which is a direct assault on federalism because through this budget. The third thing is the rising and unprecedented terror attacks in Jammu Kashmir. Then, of course, there is the NEET scam, the NET scam, and the UPSC scam, which is broken up. There are number of other issues that the opposition needs to focus on because we represent 40% of the people's voice, right? We're just 0.2%. The difference between the NDA and the India bloc is just 0.2% of the vote share. So the fact of the matter is that we are constitutionally and ethically mandated to raise the people's voices and our issues. So we're going to focus on that. We genuinely, so my point, the larger convoluted point I'm trying to make is that the symbolic will, of course, fall to the buy side. But this entire thing is really not winning BJP any credit. I mean, this kind of tinkering at the edges is not really winning them any political brownie points. I want to talk about this one instance when there was this very famous Pandit Nehru had, I mean, when the constitution was formed and when the new government was sworn in, they had renamed Janpat and Rajpat. If you remember that there is always going to be an intersection between those who govern, Rajya karne
Yes.
wale, and the Lokpat. That is what it was. That we will always be bound by what the people want. We cannot rename Lokpat and the Rajpat as what is it called? Kartavya Path. Now the point is, how does Kartavya Path and Janpat really actually merge together? There is deep history to this, which is what I keep coming back to. You cannot escape history. You need to learn from it. You need to mend your ways from it. The BJP is clearly not interested in history. History for it is always just a ploy to take pot shots at everyone who disagrees with it, and they constantly try to change the goalposts. This is not going to change what they're doing. We are in 2024, and we need to hold them accountable for what they are doing and not doing. Their sense of omission and commission. So, larger point is, let us keep our eye on the ball. Let us focus on what the BJP needs to be held accountable for, and not what they are trying to do. And I'll tell you why I'm pointing this out. Because in the last 10 years, one of the things that we have picked up on is every time there is something of substance that the opposition points out, whether it's Pegasus, whether it was the COVID deaths, whether it was the PM Care scam, whether multiple other issues or demonetization, every time the BJP has brought in something else to obfuscate and deflect attention. The reason they are doing this today is because they are on the mat with the budget and on the federal issue. That is why they are saying, let us now try to float this balloon to distract the opposition. We are not going to bite the bait. Absolutely not. Our eye is razor focused on the ball.
Right. But a very interesting discussion, explanation on the Ashoka Hall has also been put out by Rashtrapati Bhavan. And I just want to read this out for you and Ajay Gudavardi, then I'll take a comment from you. They say in the press release, it's written that Ashoka Hall was originally a ballroom. The word Ashok connotes someone who is free from all sufferings or is bereft of any sorrow. Also, Ashoka refers to Emperor Ashok, a symbol of unity and peaceful coexistence. The national emblem of the Republic of India is the lion capital of Ashoka from Sarnath. The word also refers to the Ashoka tree, which has a deep significance in Indian religious traditions as well as arts and culture. Renaming Ashoka Hall as Ashok Mandap brings uniformity in language and removes the traces of anglicization while upholding the key values associated with the word Ashok. So these are the last three lines. One has to really underline and understand the meaning where they are talking about bringing uniformity in language and removing the traces of anglicization while upholding the key values associated with the word Ashok. What would you say, really, Professor Ajay, especially the last three
This
lines?
is yeah, I mean, the uniformity of language has been their long-term, agenda of Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. And this whole bit on Anglicization is a bit, strange, because if there are any hyper modernists, it is the RSS. Gandhi was a symbol of anti-colonial struggle. Gandhi came up with a language that was linked to a local cultural idiom, but it was RSS which believed in a European idea of the nation state. That's one. Second, can we only end up talking only about cultural autonomy, even assuming this is some kind of a cultural assertion? Where is that assertion in your economic policy? When you are privatizing, as Pushparaj was pointing, you are
Right.
selling one, you are behaving like an East India company, selling one public sector after another, one public sector after another, and you are having Mr. Modi's all these foreign trips. I do not know what is coming out of it, but it is very clear that much of it is only in terms of business deals. So where is the question of economic sovereignty? Will we stand up and say that we will resist IMF and World Bank? Will we stand up and say that we will not know? This was the debate even during UPA regime when UP were submitting. The difference is this: under UPA we had these debates that India should not submit summarily to IMF and World Bank conditionalities. Today, there is no such debate. So where does this end? You are having already a colonial attitude to fight anglicization on the cultural front. So this, I think, this divergence that they have, so on one hand you want to have bullet trains, which is all borrowed technology. Why are you borrowing from abroad? Why don't you manufacture there? You think that is okay. This is the government, Nilu, which has privatized and brought in FDIs in, forget others, in defense sector. They talk of hyper nationalism, armed forces, but and Congress was a party which continuously warned that you cannot have FDIs and foreign private investments in your armed military sector, because that compromises your security discourse. But this government went ahead and declared that we are going to bring in FDI in the defense sector too, and they have also given defense sector for private manufacturing. So on economic front, you are completely subjugating and following a neo-colonial policy. Simply on the cultural front, you keep on asserting anglicization, this, that, many of which have practically no meaning to common people on the ground. Now it makes absolutely no sense to common people. Yes, cultural assertion will make sense when it also converts to dignified social and economic life. But RSS, BJP are continuously using a cultural idiom, cultural assertion to obfuscate poor governance, faltering economy, rising poverty levels, inequalities, growing inflation, and therefore budget is really the context. Though the suffering being imposed by budget, you want to ameliorate by recalling Ashoka's, that he is a solution for all suffering, and we need to celebrate. So this kind of hyper psychological, psychedelic kind of upliftment of common people, it worked. It will partly worked in the past when people had deep trust in Modi's leadership. 2014 to 19, post 19 Balakot, when people believed these were serious attacks on and so forth. People took some meaning when, even when he called for demonetization, they saw elevation in suffering. But when that trust has clearly eroded, that is reflected in Modi's dwindling number of his own election, simply putting up a cultural assertion becomes very, very, very shallow. It is like the constitutional Hatya Day, that you are murdering constitution day in and day out with your bulldozers and abject disrespect for separation of powers, and then you hold up constitution. Today you have a neo-colonial economic policy. You want and decolonization on the cultural front. So these, which are no, these are completely upfront. Writing is on the wall. And to think that people of India cannot read these messages, that you can confuse them by giving 10 multiple messages simultaneously and then push your agenda, that game is over. That game worked from 2014 to 24, because people trusted them. They thought something will come out of this. They understood this confusion as some kind of a preparatory step for some big transformation India is going to witness. That trust, that hope, that language of Achhe Din are over.
Right.
Now people are very discerning. In that discerning contest, if you play these kinds of tricks, that is going to be completely counterproductive. And they need to, and even if it is in their own self interest, forget rest of us and the nation, it is in their own political self interest that they need to stop these
Right. Okay, so I'll come for the concluding remarks to Pushpraj. So, what would you really say towards the end? Renaming the two iconic halls at Rashtrapati Bhavan, is it just a continuation of BJP's older agenda? People thought that if they come with a lesser mandate, they might mend their ways. But does it look like that towards the end? Yes.
Neeluji, just to reiterate the 3 points that I had made, one is that the BJP, by renaming history, cannot run from its history. In fact, as both Professor Gudavardi and I have been saying, they are aping exactly what the East India Company and the colonial Raj did, both in terms of what their political policies are vis-a-vis our civic and social freedoms, and what they are doing vis-a-vis our economy. They are looting this nation for a select few crony capitalists. Secondly, they are not really upholding the spirit of republicanism by attacking the opposition, by attacking the minorities, whether it's Muslims or Christians, and then to continue to do this symbolic, farcical renaming of historical monuments for posterity, I mean, they're really not doing anyone service. That's my second point. The third thing, to continue what Professor Gudavardi was saying, if they genuinely want to, and here I'm going to talk in my political hat, if they genuinely want to have this cultural assertion, let them begin at home. I was just looking at, I mean, I couldn't do a comprehensive search on this in the short time that I had, but I was looking at the number of cabinet ministers and their children who have studied abroad. Why are they so, if they're so angry about colonialism, and if they're so angry about this, if they're so gungo about this cultural assertion, Swarajya and Indian, this thing, let them begin by home. Let their children boycott all these foreign universities. I couldn't do a full list, but I have at least 15 of them here on my phone. I'm sure there are many more. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I mean, if you are seeking, the prime minister himself goes and seeks validation from abroad. He goes and keeps hugging these foreign leaders. He keeps on going and asking for these foreign awards. Why do you seek validation? Be culturally proud of yourself. Assert yourself. Let the RSS give you some award about the greatest prime minister on planet Earth. Let them do something like that. Similarly, why do you embrace globalism? Why do you keep seeking FDI? You have in fact raised the cap. You have reduced the taxes on foreign direct investment, including Chinese investment, which they are now welcoming. Even though China has captured X number of square kilometers of our land, you are now open to their money from abroad. So now my point is, when we do it, it is somehow poverty of mind and colonial mindset and so on and so forth. But when you do it, it is all progressive and kosher and necessary for national interest. I mean, hello, no one is buying this, this kind of backward, regressive thing that, we will do it and you will not do it. I mean, this is not going to fly anymore. People can see through this. I mean, they're genuinely treating India and Indians as if we are like some kindergarten. We are not. We can see through your nonsense.
So it's a binary where they are trying to assert republicanism and also a religious symbolism. Will this binary work for BJP? That's $1 million question. And would the public really take it as a political trick? I leave it to the viewers to decide on this. And thank you so much, Ajay Gudavarti. Pushparaj, thank you so much for coming on the show. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion, subscribe to our channel, send us your feedback, and stay tuned to The Federal.